Hello, everyone, and welcome to Project Model UN, India's #1 resource for Model United Nations. Today, I have a very special guest for you. His name is Ajay Sabharwal, and he's the Secretary General of Chicago Model United Nations and the founder and president of the Indian Youth Economic Association. Now, let me tell you why I'm so excited about this interview. There's two main reasons. The first reason is because Ajay is the Secretary General of Chicago Model United Nations, and it's the first time that they're coming to India, and it's really exciting. And when I was in college, actually, MUN, which is the shorthand of Chicago Model UN, was one of my favorite conferences because they focus on crisis committees, and it's just really a lot of fun. So that's the first reason why I'm excited to speak to Ajay. The second reason why I'm excited to speak to him, and I think that you're going to be very excited as well, is that he is somebody who has just graduated from the 12th grade, and he's already started a research organization so that adults and organizations take him seriously. And now here he is basically co-founding this conference. So he's really accomplished, and I think that you're going to be able to learn a lot from him because he's pretty much your age. So if you're thinking, nobody takes me seriously, or I want to do something exciting, I think that Ajay is going to be a great example of things that we can do. So with that long introduction, Ajay, thank you so much for being on the program. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Karen.
Okay, Ajay, so my first question to you, I kind of built you up and said that you founded this organization and you're doing Choman. So tell me, what is your Model UN story? Because I know you did Model UN also at the Modern School. So tell us, when was the first time that you did Model UN, and what has been your trajectory with the activity?
Okay. As far as I remember, I think it was 9th or 10th grade.
Okay.
And I was a part of the school's editorial board, the junior or middle school editorial board.
Mm-hmm.
And we were working on this new journal coming out for only the middle block, which was supposed to be called the Red Brick Times.
Okay.
And it was, keeping in mind with our school's tradition, and almost all of the buildings there are just old red bricks. It's an old campus. So, and there was one of my seniors, she's at Harvard now, actually. And she had got this invite, obviously through the teacher, to a Model UN conference. And we were discussing things about we were discussing options about whether or not to set up a student council, and whether the editorial board could, propose such an idea to the school administration. And while we were arguing, and there came a point where there wasn't actually anyone who was ready to oppose me in that sense of the term. And all that I can remember is that a couple of days later, my senior sent me a message, an email saying, okay, it's difficult to actually argue with you. You can win arguments very easily. Would you like to go for this thing called a Model UN? And my first impression was that we'll have to fly to New York City and we'll be going to the UN headquarters. And perhaps I think that's the way everyone who first gets introduced to the concept of a Model UN thinks of it.
Right, you have no idea what it is. So you're like...
Yeah, I had no idea at all. And then a couple of days later, we decided that we'd be going to that Model UN, and I was supposed to go for the Historical Security Council with a person who would become a very close friend a couple of years later. But what ended up happening was that another friend of mine, who was a classmate, was going for this committee called the Financial Stability Board.
Okay.
And before I ventured into MUNs, I think ever since 5th or 4th grade, I've always been interested in finance and economics, finance, the like. So I talked to this friend of mine, and I asked her if she would be comfortable with letting me go for the Financial Stability Board.
Wow, so you swapped last minute. You swapped committees. Wow.
Yeah. And the Financial Stability Board was a crisis committee, and that's where I started. I mean, my first committee was a crisis committee. Obviously, I didn't know model. I had no experience in Model UN procedure or jargon or anything of that sort. And perhaps most of the points that I really wanted to make, because of my little knowledge of finance and a bunch of Forbes magazines in my bag, I somehow couldn't make because I didn't know anything about Model UN procedure. But I think after the conference did end, my chair was surprised to know that I was actually a first timer. So, and that was it. I mean, I think it was a concept that I fell in love with there and then. And I decided this is not something that I'm going to leave very easily or very soon.
Right. You're like, I'm here to stay. I like it, and I'm gonna keep doing it. Okay.
Yeah.
Ajay, so I love it. Your first conference, you find a committee that you like, and you swap. A lot of people don't do that because it's scary enough that you did the research, and you still don't know what you're gonna do, but you still swapped it. I love it. How did you go from that delegate who started out at a conference to now being the Secretary General of Chicago Model United Nations?
Okay.
So, sorry, the reason I asked that is because that's kind of like the holy grail, right, of Model UN. After you've won Best Delegate, you want to be the Secretary General. So how did you do that?
Okay. So the time when I went for my first Model UN conference, the society at Modern School was not formed yet. There was no official or formal structure for a Model UN society at Modern School.
Okay. So Modern School is where you did your schooling.
Schooling.
Okay. It's a school in New Delhi for those people who don't know. Okay.
Yeah. So after I went for a couple of conferences, I believe about 2 or 3, and all of these were crisis committees right in the beginning.
Yeah, I love crisis committees. Love them.
Yeah. After that, a couple of my friends, we got together and we'd been to a couple of conferences here and there as individuals. And we decided that, that there was a certain need for a Model UN society, for a certain structure so that we could organize things in a better manner. And a couple of months later, we formed the MUN society with the support of our teachers and our principal. And about a year or so after that, we hosted our first Model UN conference.
Oh, wow. So you guys founded
School.
that. Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that now this Model UN conference is pretty established in New Delhi. It's one of the ones that everybody goes to pretty much.
Yeah, it is, I believe, perhaps the largest conference in India at this point. I mean, last year there were about 800 to 900 people, and something that is not a figure that's very common in the Delhi school circuits.
Well, that's amazing.
And and a year after that, I served as Secretary General of my school's international conference. And that was about it. I mean, all this while, one thing that I really couldn't step down from was actually going to specialized crisis committees. I think apart from a couple of just 1 or 2 committees in the beginning, everything else has been a specialized crisis committee that I've been to.
Of course. And it's such a different skill set, right? To be a good delegate in a General Assembly or even an ECOSOC committee, completely different from being successful in crisis. So actually, I want to get into this a little bit later and ask you about your strategy to be successful in Model UN. Okay, so I get it. You like Model UN, you went to your school and you said, we need to start a Model UN society. You do so. 1 year later, you start a conference. I love it, of course, with a team of students. And then it becomes one of the top conferences in Delhi. So I love it. So what I'm getting from you is you've taken a lot of initiative along the way and you've started things along the way. Love it. At some point, I think that the delegates who are listening, they're saying, okay, I can start a conference. That's one way to go. Or if I'm part of a school where there's already a Model UN club, then I can kind of rise through the ranks, right? You start out as an assistant director, then a director, whatever that might look like. So that's kind of an understood path, kind of. What is striking to me is you haven't attended the University of Chicago.
No.
You don't go there. How do you then become the Secretary General of that conference? I think that's a big question here that maybe students can learn from. So tell us that story.
Sure. So now I passed out of school last year, but the quest...
Last year, okay.
Yeah, last year. But the quest for Chicago MUN and to get it to India is something that's been going on for about 3 to 4 years, honestly.
Wow. Okay, wait, before you get into that, why did you care about Chicago Model UN? Like, how did you even think about that?
Okay. So, while we were kids, I mean, it wasn't as if, now this is the case in almost all Delhi or Indian MUN circuits. It's that most of the decisions are made by the teachers or the school administration while organizing an MUN. But now the things have changed, and I think I would, give the credit to modern school, the modern school administration, and to my friends who I worked with at the MUN society. And this was because our teachers allowed us to do what we thought was correct. Because something that is known as a student initiative shouldn't be something that is a student initiative only on paper. It should have the equal involvement of all students in that sense. And this is something that almost every school lacked in Delhi at that point in time, about 3 or 4 years back. But once everyone took the initiative in that sense, and we were people who were very dedicated. This is not being very modest, but again, dedicated is not something that we wouldn't associate with being modest.
Of course.
Yeah, but what happened was that we used to look at all kinds of Model UN conferences, all types of committees, all types of structures, and try to incorporate the best out of everything.
Okay.
And obviously, Harvard, University of Chicago, Yale, these were names as universities that we knew that were established in reputable brands and had reputable Model UN societies. And perhaps that was the best way to go forward. So, and obviously, our society had a knack for specialized agencies. And we, in fact, simulated India's first Mossad simulation, and then we had this concept that is, I wouldn't say copied, but is, people take a lot of inspiration from the concept of political parties meet, and all Indian political parties meet. This was something we started at Modern School in, I believe, 2012. And this is something that is not even a specialized committee anymore.
It's
because every Model UN conference has this conference now. So,
and I love it
because
I think it speaks about how there's been a lot of commentary politically, especially because elections just happened, how the Indian youth is becoming more and more involved and they care more. And you hear older generations saying, we didn't used to care that much about politics. But now young students are actually caring more. So I think what you're saying is absolutely on point, and it's a reflection of how the youth is becoming more and more involved, and they want to have a voice, right?
That's true. Now, what happened was, I'll get back to the story of how Chicago really came to be. We were going through, I believe, the Chicago MUN committee pages, okay? And then we looked at the committees, and we were like, we haven't seen anything like this before. One of the committees read Giants of Wall Street. Now, this had been my dream ever since I did my first financial stability board, that, okay, this is something that I have to do once. This is the thing. Then we had committees like, those pirates
Somali pirates.
Pirates in the Caribbean. There was actually one Pirates in the Caribbean committee as well. I was talking to Priyanka the other day about that. And then there was something about, I believe, the Chinese dynasties at one point. This was the largest committees. And again, Delhi was at that time flooded with large committees which had 100 people. And this was something that we really couldn't digest because one could never really get to speak at that point. And that's why we always wanted to go to smaller committees and specialized committees where you could speak more and you could interact more with people. And they had a concept of almost all of them being specialized agencies. Apart from one, all of them being small cabinets and security councils. And we liked the kind of committees they simulated. And I think there was a Napoleon committee. And then there was, I believe, one thing that got my eye was the Indira Gandhi cabinet along with the Richard Nixon cabinet.
I was once
and that was something that was a beautiful concept.
Yeah, I love it because they really are really creative. I remember when I was first year in college, I went to a Charles V committee at MUN. And it was just like, it's super random. Like, who creates Charles V committee? And I think that the University of Chicago is exactly the place where they do that.
That's true. So this happened. We looked at the committees and we decided that this is something that we have to do here in Delhi. And this is something that has to be done not just because we are experts at crisis committees, that one may put it, but because this is something that is the need of the hour. People need to look beyond the conventional 102 people or 202 people inside a room for 4 days and just looking at each other, spending 2 hours just in the attendance. That was not the kind of vision we had for Model UN in the country or in the region for that matter. So, well, obviously, the circuit at that time wasn't matured enough for us to have a only crisis committees conference. But as time progressed and as I had more time to myself, um, I wrote to Arun, who served as Secretary General of Chicago MUN this year, like just 2 months back, in fact. And I wrote to him. We talked for about months, in fact. And well, as one may put it, the rest is history.
Okay, so how I love. Okay, I want to mention something here. So you said that it was a process of 3 or 4 years, and I guess part of that was you just coming to know about Chicago Model United Nations.
Yeah.
Was it hard to convince them to come? How did you do? Was it difficult, or was it something that they were relatively open to?
Okay. But first of all, I'll go to the first part of your statement. I know even that wasn't really directed as a question. But I think when we come to the concept of 3 to 4 years, definitely it was like this. When you have a 4 or 5-year-old kid who walks across a toy shop every day and has got this beautiful shining metallic gun out on the window pane. And he walks across that every day, and in his mind, he's trying to imagine that when I get the gun, I'm going to shoot it at this fellow, I'm going to shoot it at that fellow. And right now, I know video isn't really working, but I was really making the shooting gestures.
Okay,
right. My point was that, yeah, but the point was that for those 2.5, 3 years, I think it was all in the brain. I shouldn't say that I'm a person who lives in the future and doesn't live in the present. But for all those 2.5, 3 years, I thought about if and when this happens, how it will happen. So it's not as if someone tells me today, okay, you've planned for the last 1 year, that's an excellent job. I'm going to say I planned for the last 4 years. That's how much I've planned for the Chicago Model UN India. And for the last 1 year, yes. Then once I got in touch with Arun, I wouldn't say that it was easy to convince them, solely because I think that would undermine the legitimacy of the conference. And I wouldn't even say that it wasn't very difficult, because I think Arun was open to all sorts of ideas from our side. And obviously, the Chicago MUN conference that you get in Delhi in a week from now isn't going to be exactly like the conference that you have at Chicago. There will be a lot of differences. But the essence will be that the core that represents Chicago MUN would remain exactly the same. That's, I think, most important to any conference. And yeah, see, one thing that I'll definitely say is that Priyanka's on board now. Priyanka Sethi, she's from the University of Chicago. She's serving as a Director General.
Okay.
And now she's in Delhi. She's from Dehradun, I believe. And she's in Delhi right now, and we're working with her on the conference. But I think my initial conversation was with Arun Abraham Singh, the former Secretary General. And I think he was extremely supportive in almost any action that we wanted to take, whether it was a different set of committees, whether it was a specific venue that we wanted to select, whether it was a different type of committee or a different type of structure that we wanted to present to a committee. I think he's been extremely supportive in almost everything that we wanted to do. And I think I'm thankful for him, thankful to him for the same. But yeah, again, I wouldn't say that was difficult to convince them. I would say that obviously he's sitting there in Chicago, I'm here in Delhi. Perhaps getting that communication across is something that was definitely a task.
Right. Oh, and you sound like you're passionate about it, and you really believe in the vision behind it. So I think when somebody encounters somebody with that level of enthusiasm, it's kind of hard to say no, right? I mean, you have to have like a really good reason. Okay, so yeah. I want to dig into this a little bit more. Something that stands out to me is the fact that you guys were the ones who basically said, we want Chicago Model UN to come here. As opposed to, for example, other conferences where they think India is a market that we want to target, and then they find partners. It was more of a pull factor. Yeah. So one thing that I find interesting about that is, right now when you're bringing Choman to India, you're serving as the Secretary General. I think, and from what I heard you say, it sounds like you're also having input into the committees that are being run and how they're being run. Yeah. And the reason I find that interesting is because that is not the model that I have seen, at least from the outside, that Harvard has followed, or even the University of Pennsylvania has followed. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that. It sounds like you guys are way more involved from a
Oh,
substantive point of view as opposed to just
yeah.
logistical. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
Tell me more
yeah,
about that.
yeah. That's true. That's true. That's true. Okay.
Mm.
First of all, regarding Arun and the whole communication with the Chicago scene, the night we finalized Chicago Model U in India, and I think it was a night or so before this large conference in Delhi, DU Model United Nations, or the Model UN of the Delhi University.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to specifically finalize and launch it a day or so before that, so that we get a good marketing strategy in place. And that's the largest conference, one of the largest conferences in Delhi. And we use that as a tool, as a forum to publicize it, as I was going as a delegate there.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to Arun, and the first preference from my side was that Arun serve as Secretary General, because I thought that to be appropriate, in the sense that he has served as Secretary General at
Exactly.
Chicago MUN, and I'm sure that Arun would have, but perhaps if I would have been in Arun's place, even I would have rejected the idea, because now I don't know if you know this, but Arun's off to 200 West Street. And that is, for anyone who doesn't know, the headquarters of Goldman Sachs. And that's where he'll be working while we'll be busy with Chicago MUN.
Of course. So
And obviously,
he's
I wish him
busy.
the very best for the same. But if I had that option, I would have picked up Goldman any day. So I'm not going to really blame Arun for that.
Of course, he's
Right?
graduated.
But,
He's on to
yeah.
different things in his life.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah. So, and then he said that you're the one who's going to be there most of the time. You'll be the one who'll be working. So it's only appropriate that you serve as Secretary General. And so that's how I was.
Okay, love it.
Now, regarding the pull factor in getting Chicago to India, I wouldn't just say that it was just us who approached Arun and the Chicago people to get the conference to India. I think somehow deep inside, even they wanted to come to India, really. Because now this is something that I've seen in the past as well. I've had a lot of friends who are at the University of Chicago. And I think even the MUN community there has a lot of people from India.
Yep. Yeah, that is absolutely true.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that that's really a reason to get the conference to India in the first
No,
place.
but there's this
yeah,
level of, wanting to come back to the motherland.
absolutely. Yeah,
and
I think as far as I can recall, and as far as I remember the Model UN records from last couple of years, they've always had one or two Indian committees every year. They may
Right, yeah.
neglect other countries out there. France and Germany might just get a half a committee in 1 or 2 years. But I think India gets one or two committees every year. That's it.
Yeah.
Everything from the Mughals to Indira Gandhi and almost everything out there. So I think that way the University of Chicago's got a soft spot for India in that sense, and not just the Indian Model UN committee community. But other than that, I think from our side, I think the time was right more than anything else, Karen. Because at this point, the Model UN community here in Delhi and in the adjoining circles in other places in India, it's evolved to a point where people can actually have a only crisis committee conference. And I think in that, modern school has played a large role because we spearheaded the concept of crisis committees. But other than that, you have schools like Cathedral and John Conn High School in Mumbai, who've actually advocated the cause of specialized agencies and how they're really important to the MUN concept in general. Because from the way I've interacted with the delegates who really like to MUN, no one really wants to go to a 200-member committee where they will actually never get to speak. And more importantly, I'm not going to say that I'm an advocate of war over peace, but somehow people have this opinion, and I think to a certain extent it's absolutely correct, that UN committees are essentially on principle, if they are to be taken as realistic simulations, they are stalemates.
Yep.
Right. They don't really have the power to actually do anything. Even the Security Council, for that matter, it will always be a stalemate, because if there's actually an issue that is worth debating, you'll always get a veto at the end of it. So I think at least these committees provide these delegates with some sort of power in their hands, try to be those people that they know they can never be, because half of them are actually dead. But other than that, I think it's actually about living the life of a person that you know that you might not just be, but at least that person had a considerable amount of influence, had an impact in history, and that is something that delegates want to do today. They
Right.
want to have an impact in history, and that is the one reason that they really, I really think that the MUN community here in Delhi and in India would appreciate getting a conference here that is, well, specialized only. And as you said earlier, Harvard had already come here. Uh, excuse me, so sorry. Just a second.
No worries.
Yeah, sorry. So, and Isle Monk and UPenn had come. So I think it was high time that I got my favorite Model UN conference to our country.
I love it. I love it. I love what you said about crisis committees because there's a big debate, right, in the Model UN community about which ones are better and should delegates be outraged by fantasy committees. And I have like an academic perspective on it, and I have my personal opinion on it, and my favorite committees are crisis committees by far. And it's exactly because of what you said, that you get portfolio powers and you can actually write directives and things actually happen as opposed to, you know, a slower process that would be in a GA or whatever. Okay, so I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the Indian Youth Economic Association. So I saw on your LinkedIn profile that you founded this organization 2 years ago, correct? Was it in 2012?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So
2 years ago, exactly.
For our listeners, what you told me earlier when we were doing the pre-call chat is that it's a research organization, and that you founded it in a sense because you're young and adults weren't taking you seriously. So
No. Okay, I'll let you complete your question before I actually answer that.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So perfect. So I just want to know the story behind the Indian Youth Economic Association. First of all, tell us what it does, and then tell us why did you start it?
Okay. So I think even before I tell you what it does, I'll have to go to the story of how I really came to be associated with the concept of finance and economics, and how that really served as a foundation to the building of this. Okay. And if I recall well, I think the year was 2005, the ending of 2005, the beginning of 2006. I think I was in class 5th. And if I recall well, that was the first time the Indian stock market had touched the milestone of 10,000 index points. And that was the thing that was in the newspapers all the time, that the markets had touched 10,000 and were moving towards a bull market and all of that.
And there was a big hype around it.
Absolutely. And obviously, I was not someone who was acquainted with the concept of what financial markets are. Obviously, no 5th grader will be. But other than that, I somehow, was pulled towards that idea. I didn't even know how the markets worked or anything. And I think there was a time when there was this ending scene in the Gordon Gekko film, Wall Street. I saw parts and bits of it, and that somehow attracted me to the concept of finance, and later on that level to economics. Now, when it comes to the idea of the Youth Economic Association, I'd first approached the Adult Indian Economic Association. Obviously, adult is not a part of its name, but I'd put that in those. Again, I'm raising my hands and using those apostrophe sign. We don't have video working, but I'm sure you can imagine. Yes, that. So I approached them because I wanted to join. Simple as that, right? And I think
you were in the 5th grade?
No, that was later, 10th, 11th class. No, definitely not in the 5th grade. So late, obviously, my interest in it built up.
Since then, okay. So how old were you when you wanted to join?
I think it was in 10th or 11th grade or something like that.
Got it. Okay.
Around that time, right? So obviously, by that time, I'd gone through Freakonomics, and long live Stephen D. Levitt. Again, that's another Chicago factor there. That's another Chicago factor there. And we'll come to that later. But that was again another building point in that sense, and I started researching on my own, coming with these wacky theories, just as the guys at Freakonomics do. Everything from cricketing scams to land scams, and why cocoa's the next big thing, and why BlackBerry is really sold and why they're out and everything. Right. Those kind of things that really don't have anything to do with mainstream economics, but in essential are your fundamentals about how humans think. The very fundamentals that one associates the Freakonomics people with.
Right. I love it.
So, and then I approached the Indian Economic Association to join. Right. And
And they
as
rejected
one
you.
could easily predict, they rejected me.
Of course.
Why?
Of
The
course.
simple reason was because I was a kid. And
Right. They're like, what do you know about economics? Go
yeah,
take a test.
absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. So, and there was this person. Okay, I think it's appropriate that I do not name him, but he was a very learned man, right, Karen? And he was
Oh
basically
no,
he had
this is going to be a
pitched.
bad thing. I can see
Yeah,
it coming.
it's going to be a very bad thing, and it's going to be bad for me, not for him. Okay, I still
Okay.
respect that person a lot, and he had a PhD in economics, and he
Hmm.
actually wrote about economics in Sanskrit.
Hmm.
Now,
Oh,
Sanskrit is an ancient Indian language.
right.
I'm sure you worked in India, so you know that.
Yep.
And he wrote about economics. He wrote Sanskrit essays, essays in Sanskrit and economics and all of that, and from the ancient texts. I'm nowhere in front of men like him. But he advised me that I had approached him with the idea of the Indian Youth Economic Association after I was rejected by the Indian Economic Association. He was on the board there on the Economic Association.
Oh,
There. So
okay.
I advised him that, sir, this is our idea and this is what we want to do. Now do I get a chance to join? And he's like, okay, this is a good idea. Why don't you implement this? Why don't you implement that? He suggested certain other points, and I came up with a proposal. And I said, sir, I've tried incorporating your ideas. How do you like this now? And
And this
then he's like,
ideas were for the Youth Economic Association.
yeah,
Okay.
so yeah, essentially. So he wanted an economic plus social plus political and all of those blocks on top of the economic. That's what he essentially wanted.
Mm.
So not how the association is now, in fact. So I approached him with the idea again. I said, sir, I've tried to incorporate what you wanted. Do you think now is the time when I'll get a chance? And then he got really angry and he's like, do you know who I am? I've done this, I've done that, and all of that. And I have this PhD, I write articles in Sanskrit, and you think you're a kid and you can get behind me and get all of this done? This is very pathetic. You don't give me credit for the idea that I gave you. I said, sir, I've given you the idea and I'm getting to you for the same. And somehow talks broke down and I decided there's no point
Oh no.
talking to the adults. It's better to live in Neverland and stay a kid forever. Or perhaps let the adults know that even if I'm under 18, as one may put it, again, back to the apostrophes and the hand gestures, I don't think that should deter me from doing something that I can do as an adult or as any other adult could do. So, talk to a couple of friends who were interested in economics, who were interested in research, and decided that adult support or no adult support, we're going to start this anyhow. So, we planned for about a couple of months. And on the 26th of June, again, this is a very strategic date that they've chosen. This is also the date in which the UN Charter was signed.
Ah, there you
And
go.
we decided to sign our charter on the 26th of June, 2012. And that's how the Indian Youth Economic Association came into being. As far as what it does now,
Yes,
it's
big
primarily a
question,
research
'cause-
organization, as I said earlier. Right, it's primarily a research organization, but as I said, I think also in a pre-conference chat that research is something that's not taken very seriously. One, also because I don't have a PhD, I'm not entirely that, but more importantly because we don't have PhDs working with us either. That's the larger problem. So obviously, apart from research, we also carry out independent research for multidisciplinary activities. We don't restrict ourselves to economics in that sense. As long as it's research, it's knowledge, I think that's the primary focus. Other than that, like I said earlier, I think we're focused on youth-based activities, such as debates, quizzes, Model United Nations conferences. And then there's this concept of economic fests. This is something that's a very popular concept in Delhi and other places in India. It's basically different economic simulations like mock stock simulations or something that general finance clubs do in US schools or colleges. That's the sort of thing that we also do. Like I don't know if you've heard of this, but there's this thing called a OS World Simulation.
No,
Something
what is
that I came. Now this is something that I came across when I'd come for the Harvard conference. We had an entire package, so we went to this OS World Simulation, where it's again sort of a role-playing scenario where you represent a country or a block of people and you negotiate with people and run the world and all of that. So again, it's sort of an economic simulation on how to run the world peacefully. I took the word peacefully out of it while I was representing the Western Pass, but that's another story. So those are the kind of simulations and activities that we're heavily invested into.
Got it.
So primarily it's economics and finance focused, but we don't restrict ourselves to that. And because I personally believe that economics as a study on its own is something that is incomplete. Without the study of history and that of politics, one cannot possibly study economics in its entirety. So I think that's it's very important that we get the concept of history and politics as well, and that is why we started training modules as well. This is also a primary part of our working in that sense. We have about
Got
50
it.
to 60 modules in that sense. We conduct training workshops all across the country.
And who are
These
they
include
targeted for?
schools, school or college students, school
Okay.
and or college students for that matter.
Mhm.
So these include Model U, and these include different types of debating. These include history. These include politics. These include economics. These include basic finance for the school kids who need to be taught how the market works and the basic stuff. And in most of the cases, we don't. Again, generally for the not so privileged ones, we don't even charge a fee or anything of that sort, because I think the primary purpose there is to just get that information to them, get that knowledge out to them, something that wasn't available to us when we were young. Because most of these things we discovered as we were sitting in that Model UN room.
And you
We
said when you were in
discovered-
the 10th grade, like you're not when you were younger.
Yeah. So again, we target even younger kids.
Okay,
right?
so I
But
want
other than that,
to ask you a few questions about what you said. So you do
Yeah.
research, and then you do quizzing and debate,
Yeah.
and then you have training modules. So
Yeah.
you so you work do you work primarily with schools and run these workshops for them? Is that
Yeah.
so you're
Yeah.
you're essentially acting as a service provider of some kind to schools.
Yeah, in one sense, you could say so. Yeah.
Okay.
A service provider of sorts. Yes.
Okay, interesting. Very interesting.